Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Raeann, but you can call me Ray. Today's video is super exciting. I just can't even express how excited I was for this video. So Annette from Annette's Makeup Corner asked to do a collab, and one, oh my god. Two, I was just super excited, and we kind of went back and forth on ideas of what we should do, and then we ended up deciding on one of the ideas that she suggested, which I thought was really cool, and I'm just super excited to do something a little bit different on my channel. And it really picked my brain when it came to this topic, because I was like, wait, wow, that's a really good idea. Let me see what I can find in my collection. So basically Annette's idea was go through our palettes and find palettes that we would change. So if there was a shade that we wanted to switch out that we didn't like, or if there were shades that were too similar, maybe we had suggestions on what shades would have been better. So I thought that was really cool because I do have a few things I would like to change in my collection. But before we get started, I will link Annette's channel somewhere below, or maybe in this video. I haven't decided yet. I don't know what I'm doing. But Annette is really cool, super sweet. Her videos are just really awesome to watch. She's so creative, all of her looks are super colorful, and her opinions are super honest, which I can appreciate 100%, and she's just super sweet. So if you aren't subscribed to her and you haven't watched any of her videos before, which I probably wouldn't believe if you told me that, but if you aren't, go ahead and check her out, and let's go ahead and get into these palettes that are barricading me right now. So the first one that I'm going to start off with is actually me just jumping off the deep end a little bit, and I felt like I couldn't not talk about these. And yes, it's more than one palette, but the first thing I want to talk about is the ColourPop palettes that have pressed glitters in them. So I know this is stretching the topic a little bit, isn't exactly what we decided on, not necessarily going palette by palette, but basically I went through all of my ColourPop palettes, took out all of the ones that had pressed glitters. All of these have one or multiple pressed glitters in them. I feel like I literally just breathed, I just had fire come out of my nose like I'm a dragon or something. Oh my god, I'm gonna drop them. Basically, I mean, I'm not gonna lie and say that I've never used the pressed glitters in looks before, but they're not eye safe. They're chunky glitters. They could literally poke your eye out. I mean, I don't even want to know what would happen if one of those got stuck in your eye. I mean, ow. So, you know, I just wish they didn't do that. Literally all of these palettes have one or more pressed glitters in them, and I think maybe there was just a time, and I want to say it was probably for about a year. Honestly, maybe it was more, maybe it was less. They come out with palettes literally every week. I mean, they've definitely slowed down recently, but for a while it was every week they were coming out with something, and it seemed like every palette for a really long time had a pressed glitter in it. So the main reason why I don't like that is because I am a little too tempted by them, and I end up putting them near my eye anyways, even though I know I shouldn't, and I don't like the temptation. I don't know. I just think that they should find something else for the pressed glitters to be in. I mean, not all of us are going to a rave. Not all of us are going to a festival. Some of us, like me, just like sitting on our couch, okay? I don't need to put glitter all over my face to watch Friends. I mean, I could, but again, if it falls in my eye, I could possibly never watch Friends again. So I don't know. That's just something I wanted to talk about. I don't want to ramble on too much about that, but that is something I would change in all of those palettes. It wouldn't bother me if it wasn't in so many of them, but I mean, this is literally just the stack that I have, so imagine all of the other palettes that came out during the same span of time. So say if all of these came out in a year, there's probably double that I don't have, because I don't even have any of the 9-pan palettes or anything. So Like, literally, this stack would be like this big if I had all of them. Now that I'm heated, let's move on to something else. Let's see. The next palette we're going to talk about is the Lime Crime Prelude palette. So I really liked these palettes. I had the Prelude and the Chroma palette, and then I also got the, so this is Prelude, there's Chroma, and there was Exposed, is that what it was? Like the more cool tone palette. I liked all three of those, but I will say with this one, I was kind of looking through it, and I really feel like, I mean, okay, yes, I know this is a neutral palette for sure, but I feel like they don't really need the more iridescent shade and also this lighter, more like, it's like a pinky white shade. I feel like they don't need both of these in the palette because the palettes are so small. I feel like they could have had more of an opportunity to create something that was going to like give you more possibilities for looks rather than just keeping them both. Like, I feel like looking at these, they're both kind of more of your either highlight color or your like brow bone color. I feel like they could have gotten rid of one of them and then replaced it with something else, like maybe another shimmer. Because this palette, I believe, only has 3 shimmers, but if you took one of these out, like say if you took this one out, then you can have another shimmer in there, or we could just change this and keep the amount of shimmers but then just change this to a different shade. So it's these two right here, and like I said, I just really feel like, I mean, I know this is more of like an off like white with like a pink undertone, like a pinky tone to it. I guess it is definitely pulling more pink on camera too, but I mean, I feel like they could have just chose between one of these and then gone with a different color and then kind of gave you more like options, I guess. Because like, look at that. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of something that I was thinking. Maybe do like a, let's see. I would definitely think maybe a shimmer. I mean, maybe even if this one was a little more pink and then a shimmer color, I feel like that would have been really pretty and it still would have kept it more on the neutral side. But yeah, I guess that would have been like pretty. Either if they did like a peachy, so like kind of mimics this one and did like a peachy shimmer with maybe like a pink like iridescence to it, like a pink sparkle in there, or just made this one a little more pink and then made it more of a shimmer. I think that would have been really nice. But I mean, I do really like this palette, but I was just kind of thinking about it and I'm like, you know, if I could change something about this palette, that's exactly what I would do. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is the Kaleidos Futurism Sci-Fi Green palette. So this palette here, I feel like I needed to defend the fact that I do think this palette is gorgeous. So this is what the inside looks like. Sorry, the middle shade's a little, it's been through it. But, I mean, with the light shining on it, these shades do look different. But I just feel like they're just too similar that I don't necessarily need both of them. Like, maybe what I would have done is just made this shade darker and then, or made this shade brighter. Like, maybe make it more of like a neon green or like a lime green and then kept this shade, or made this shade darker and then kept the shade the way it was. Because looking at the palette, they just look so similar. And of course with the light on it, you can definitely tell that there are differences. But I mean, even then, I feel like they're so similar that you don't need both of them. And it's kind of the same thing with the Lime Crime palette. They're such small palettes that these two shades I feel like aren't needed, and that's something that you could have changed about them. Maybe if this palette was bigger like how the Gemini palette is, it would be a little more forgivable, you know? It's just like, okay, like, you know, maybe I still would have been like, okay, they probably should have changed it just a tiny bit, you know? But because it's so small, I feel like they can kind of get away with having more of a, you would just need more options for like colors, basically. Like these two are just too close for me, especially for the size of the palette. So, you know, that's how I feel about that one. But I do really like this palette. Again, I feel like somewhat bad for being like, I would change this. Because like, I like them, but you know, definitely looking at stuff with this theme in mind, I was like, okay, yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that I would change. The next thing is kind of another similar theme. So basically it's just two shades that are a little too close for comfort, you know? So the next palette is the e.l.f. Earth and Oceans palette. Ocean palette. By the way, this is a really good drugstore like palette, so if you like blues and greens, I recommend this palette. So this is what the inside of the palette looks like. And fun story, this is actually one of the first palettes I was thinking of while I was like brainstorming what palettes I would use. It's like, wait, I know there's like one or two, like a couple different shades that might be kind of too close in this palette that I remember like thinking of when I first used this palette. Let's see. Okay, so the two shades that are similar are Rock Bottom and Fuji Feels. So this shade right here and this shade here, and then I did swatch them on my fingers for you guys. So the one on my middle finger is Fuji Feels, and then we have Rock Bottom. So they definitely are a tad different. One is a little more bronzy and the other one is a little more like silvery. Like this one looks a little more silvery and this one's definitely a little bit darker, maybe a little more on the brown side, like a little more bronzy than this one is. But again, I feel like they're just a little too close. They definitely could have done something like, when I was looking at this, I was thinking maybe like a darker green shimmer. I think that would have been really nice. Or maybe even a darker like green matte. So, I mean, I could really switch out either of these and then put in like something that's going to be a little bit like darker than this one, or something that's going to, so either a darker matte or a metallic-y matte. That would have been super pretty. Because then it would have been a little bit like, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like those two shades are just a little too close, you know? I'm trying to think if there was anything else in this palette, because for some reason I thought that there was. But those are the only ones that are really jumping out to me. But yeah, I would switch one of those out and then do like a darker green or like either a darker green matte or a darker like green shimmer, and I think that would be really nice. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about doesn't necessarily have anything to do with like switching colors around at all. But as I was going through my eyeshadow palettes, I picked up this baby here. So this is the Melt Impulsive palette, and you know, the one thing, okay, I guess I would change a couple things about this palette. So I would have preferred that like this side was all matte and then this side was all shimmers. Again, not like the biggest deal, but now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, that's probably what I would have done. And this packaging is just so big and bulky and heavy. Like I picked it up and I was like, I swear I could use this like in my workouts or something. Like it literally feels like it's 5 pounds. I'm sure it's not actually 5 pounds, but like it feels like it is. So, you know, just big bulky packaging. I don't know. I just felt like I could just throw that in there because as I was going through all of my palettes, which is like 2 drawers full of palettes, I picked this one up and I was like, wow. Okay, so that's like an honorable mention. We'll just keep going though. Okay, so the next one... The next palette is, again, I keep saying this so much, but it's another palette that I really, really like. But if I could or had to or wanted to change anything about it, there's one thing that I would change, and this is going to be the Menagerie Whale Song palette. So technically, hypothetically speaking, I probably could switch this shade out with either one of their other shades or, you know, like a future shade or whatever it may be, because you can take these shadows out and then put the other like different shadows in there if you wanted to. I think the main purpose of that is probably to like refill a shade, but technically speaking, I probably could switch it out. I don't know if they have... Do they have one of the shades that I'm thinking of? So basically, this is what the palette looks like, and the only thing that I would switch out would be I would take this shade out and then do a lighter like blue shimmer shade. I think that would have been really, really pretty. I do, however, like this shade. I mean, it's just your standard like highlight shade. I mean, I have so many of them that sometimes, like, though it is nice to have that shade in palettes, it's not necessarily, it's not really necessary sometimes for me. Like, I don't need to have them in every single palette because it's just a highlight shade. So yes, this shade is super gorgeous. You can even use it on your cheeks if you wanted to. Looking at the palette as a whole, I think it would have been absolutely gorgeous if they did like a baby blue like shimmer shade. That would have been like, that would have been it. That would have been absolutely gorgeous. Like something on the lines of this shade but shimmery would have been really, really pretty. Or even if they kept the more standard highlight shade but did more of like a blue, a little bit more of like a blue or green or some sort of like iridescence to it, that would have been like killer. That would have been actually like gorgeous. Okay, so I think my last palette is going to be not a stranger to any of you that have watched any of my recent videos. This palette right here, so the Melt Rest palette. I'm so sorry, Melt, for bringing you into this twice. Again, I really like this palette, but it's kind of on the same theme as the Menagerie like palette. I probably would have taken out, like if I had to take out a shade, probably would have taken out this shade here and then put in a more copper shimmer, because I feel like that's really what this palette is missing, is more of like an orangey, like a lighter orangey tone shimmer, like literally like copper, thinking of like the color of a penny in a shimmer form. That would have been stunning in this palette. Like, yes, this palette is gorgeous, and I know a lot of people do appreciate the highlight shades. Personally, I do, but again, I have so many palettes that it's like, it wouldn't kill me to have to like go to one of my other palettes just to get a brow bone shade, and I don't always use those anyways. Like, you know, sometimes I would rather just do like a highlight shade that has some sort of color to it, like an iridescent shade, like, you know, the color that's in my inner corner from the Sugar Pill palettes. Is it Supernova? I think it might be Supernova. I like doing stuff like that, so I mean, it wouldn't really bother me that this palette didn't have this shade. I understand that a lot of people like that, and of course it is your standard like neutral palette, so I feel like if it didn't have that shade, a lot of people probably would have been like not happy, but maybe they could have just extended this palette and added one more shade and put the copper shade in there, because that would have been like, that would have been great. Maybe not even take this shade out, just add another one, just because I feel like that's really what my heart is missing in this palette, is like a really pretty like copper shimmer shade. That would have been amazing. Alright, so that's basically it. That's all of the palettes that I pulled out of my stash that I wanted to talk about to kind of change things around, what I would have done differently. Honestly, that was really fun. Like, that isn't even, like, I don't even think I would have ever thought of doing something like that. So thank you, Annette, for asking me to do this collab with you. I had so much fun working with you on this. I can't wait to see what you picked. I'm really curious to see if we ended up with any of the same palettes, because that would be kind of funny. But yeah, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. We'll see you next time.